Our first presenter is Professor Olivia Graeve, and she is in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. She is an alumnus, actually, of UC San Diego, receiving a structural engineering degree in 1995, and then got her PhD in material science from UC Davis in 2001. She's a new faculty here at UCSD in 2012, and she's earned a lot of recognition for her work in nanomaterials and manufacturing. The title of our talk today is How to Control Shape of Matter. So without any further ado, Dr. Olivia Graeve.
Oh, very nice, you're so formal. Well, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate you making the time. I am a new faculty member here at UCSD, but I'm not an assistant professor. I was previously in New York, and then previous to that I was actually in the University of Nevada, Reno. So I've had a couple of faculty positions, but I am so very happy to be back in my alma mater. I finished in 1995, so it's been a while for me, and I got here in November, so I still walk around campus, and I, sometimes feel like I have to walk into Peterson Hall for a class. But I think this deja vu feeling is going to go away eventually. I'm just delighted to be here and delighted to be able to present to you some of the work that I've been doing over the last few years with funding from a variety of sources that you can see here in SF, ONR, DARPA, and others. And so the title of my talk is How to Control the Shape of Matter and Other Curiosities of Nature. I left it to a very basic level. I'll come back to this one later. To a very basic level because I was thinking there was going to be maybe even high school students here. But I think that you'll get a good feeling about what I do and what we can do to control the shape of matter in general. In my research group, we have acquired a significant expertise in a technique known as dynamic light scattering. And this technique allows you to measure the size distribution of agglomerates. And so that picture there on your left is one of those distributions. It happens to be the distribution of particle size or agglomerate size, if you like. Either one of those is a good name. Of a copper powder that has been dissolved in water with a variety of surfactants. And so the technique is really a technique that is essential in anybody working in nanopowders, because powders have the tendency to agglomerate, and you need to be able to characterize that level of agglomeration. It has a lot of consequences, that level of agglomeration, in sintering behavior and in a variety of other things, including thermal conductivity. So this particular study, which was published last year, was related to, in fact, thermal conductivity and thermal conductivity effects of agglomeration in copper, what are known as copper nanofluids. And we can control the distribution of the particle size using surfactants. So that's one way that you could do this. And so I'm showing you over here, for those of you that are chemically inclined, the chemical reactions that occur between the copper that you are producing during synthesis and the surfactants that you're using in the container that you're synthesizing the material. So the top one is, all three of these are very well-known surfactants. The top one is PVP. The second one is oleic acid, and the third one over here is CTAB. And so these are all very good materials for controlling agglomeration. CTAB happens to be particularly good. You can see in the bottom picture again on the left, the red curve happens to be the powders that were produced using CTAB, and they have an agglomerate size of about 100 nanometers, which is really quite excellent because these materials always agglomerate. And for those of you that are more familiar with this topic, I'm not talking about crystallite size. Crystallite size is definitely nano. It's like 10 nanometers. I'm talking about real particle size, agglomerate size. So that's the key to the kinds of characterizations that we do and how we control it. And so again, one of those is surfactants. Another one is by acids. And so let me tell you a little bit about that story. In some of the work that I did, in fact, here as an undergraduate, we worked on the combustion synthesis of oxide nano powders. And so as I moved forward in my career and I became a faculty member, this always basically stuck with me. And I guess I blame my undergraduate advisor, who was here, and she's still here, and obviously I owe her tremendously. The idea was to make oxides, and so I wanted to expand the capabilities of the technique, and so I started thinking of making borides. And so the chemical formula for that, for this particular boride that I've been interested in, is this right here, lanthanum hexaboride. The material is an electronic type material. I'll tell you some of its properties in a minute. The technique is really quite simple from the perspective of synthesis. You mix lanthanum nitrate, and then you mix boron, and so when and then organic fuel. All of this is in water, dissolved in water, and then you put it in a furnace at around 500 degrees or less. In this case, actually, the furnace is at 320, and the whole thing just explodes. My students like this. I like this because there's a lot of explosion and kind of excitement in the lab when this happens. And when you're done, you get the very nice powders. So I want to tell you, let me go back to, I want to tell you about this, but in the next slide here. Where are we? Here. This material, we are interested in it because of its very unique crystal structure. You can see the crystal structure here is, it's a simple cube. It's a cube. And at the corners of the cube, you have these boron octahedra. And then in the center of the unit cell, you have the metal rare earth ion. So that could be lanthanum or it could be something else. The main interest in this material is because if you have an ion here that is typically a +3 valency, then that means that that rare earth ion wants to donate 3 electrons to the conduction band. And 2 of those electrons actually go to the boron framework because the boron framework is electron deficient by 2 electrons. So it needs to be stabilized somehow. So that this is stabilized by the electrons that are donated by the rare earth ion. And then what that means is that you end up with 1 extra electron. And that extra electron goes to the conduction band, and this becomes an electronic conductor. And that is really special. This is one of the very few ceramic materials. Metals are conductors, you know that. But ceramic materials very rarely are electronic conductors, and this one happens to be one of them. And so that's why we are interested in this material. Now think about this also. If the boron framework is deficient by 2 electrons, and you put now an ion that typically has a +2 valency instead of +3, which is what lanthanum is, then you're no longer having an electronic conductor. What you're going to have is a semiconductor. So you can control the electronic behavior of this material by putting different ions inside. You can put +3 ions, you're going to end up with a conductor. You can put +2 ions, and you're going to end up with a semiconductor. So that's the purpose of a lot of the studies that we've been doing. And so after the synthesis, I told you we get this very nice powder. And so they do have a little bit of oxide on the surface, lanthanum borate, in fact. And we need to clean that up. And so this is the concept of controlling morphology by acid cleaning. In this case, the material wants to, in fact, be in the form of cubes because that's the crystal structure. This is a mirror of the crystal structure. I showed you that cubic structure. So it wants to have that form. But if it has that sort of unclean oxide surface, you're not going to have that. So with the acid, very, very controlled, very clean acid etching of the material, you're going to end up with these very nice nanocubes. And so my lab really focuses a lot on making nanocubes, controlled morphology, controlled size, and also other morphologies that we're interested in. And so that is a big effort that we've been working on. And lanthanum was just one example. Lanthanum hexaboride was the one that happens to be a conductor. But if you prepare samarium, for example, or europium, those, because they're +2 charged, you're going to end up with a semiconductor. And so these ones are also ones that we've produced. And so what's really interesting is that if you try to make yttrium hexaboride or ytterbium hexaboride, you actually can't. And so the question is why is that? What's going on in the process, or what is it about the material stability that you cannot produce yttrium or ytterbium hexaboride, but you can produce these 3 other ones? And the answer is, so we started looking at this, and one of the things that popped out at us was the fact that the ions are very small in this case. These 2 are really quite small compared to the ones that you see, for example, right here, all of these. And so what is it about ionic size that prevents you from having stability in the system? And so it's actually not a size of the ion. What it is a cage size issue. When you look at the crystal structure again that I had shown you previously, the boron framework that you have in these materials is bonded by incredibly strong covalent bonds. And so this boron-boron bonding is really fixed in its length. And so the intercage boron-boron distance is fixed. Those boron octahedra are all the same size no matter what you put inside. And then the distances between boron octahedra, this distance over here, is also fixed. So if you start looking in the literature and you look at the size of the unit cells of these crystals, you're going to find that they really don't change no matter what you have on the inside. And so then the issue is, if that's the case, if the cage does not change in size, what happens when you put something in here that is very, very small? And what starts happening is that basically you have this rattling effect. The ion is not fixed really well inside the unit cell. There's rattling, and you basically lose stability. The whole crystal structure breaks up. And so it's an issue of percent difference between the space that you have inside, which is fixed, and the ion that you put inside that unit cell. And so for something where the difference in size is small, that means the ion is really quite good, fitting quite well in there. Something like barium, that's highly stable. Europium happens to be a region of stability. And so this is very, very stable as well. But when you look at yttrium, this is really highly unstable. The percent difference between the volume inside the unit cell and the ion is more than 50%. And so these ones over here, we also are hypothesizing that they're unstable, but we've never made it. I have one more minute. These are my current students. I am hiring more students coming in the fall, and I continue to, I think I have spots for 2 more maybe for the fall. So for those of you students that are interested, please come talk to me. And just sort of as a final word, I am in mechanical engineering, and we cover a variety of fields. Of course, I'm in materials, but we also do fluid mechanics, heat transfer, control systems, combustion, renewables, plasma. It's a fairly sort of comprehensive department. So thank you for your attention, and I would be happy to answer any questions.